The heat pressed down like a hand that meant to smother. The boards of the platform groaned under the weight of boots, the smell of sweat and horses thick in the air. Flies buzzed lazy circles over the crowd, their wings catching the glare of the noon sun. A man in a faded vest lifted the bundle higher, his voice sharp and flat. Here she is. Healthy. Strong. Hours old. The bundle shifted. No cry, just the weak rustle of movement. A strip of cloth stuck to her cheek, dark with drying blood. The crowd muttered. A few men spat into the dust. One woman pulled her shawl tight around her shoulders and turned away. Gavels wait in, the auctioneer barked. Start the bid. Numbers came slow, low at first. Half-hearted offers from men who wouldn't meet each other's eyes. $2. $4. $5. The air seemed to warp with the heat. Leather cracked as belts shifted, boots scuffed the dirt. The man on stage rocked the child in his arms as though she were a sack of grain. You folks gonna let this fine prospect go for a song? 7. A pause. Then, from the edge of the crowd, a voice as steady as a church bell. 20. Heads turned. Jonas Hale sat his horse like the saddle had grown from his bones. The brim of his hat threw his face in shadow, but the sun caught the dust along his shoulders, painting him in the color of the land. He didn't repeat himself. Didn't have to. The auctioneer's eyebrows jumped. Well now, 20 once. No one answered. Boots shuffled. Eyes fell to the ground. 20 twice. The gavel cracked like a gunshot. Jonas dismounted slow, his limp playing in the drag of one boot through the dust. The crowd parted without being asked. He climbed the steps, took the bundle from the man without a word. The child stirred, a faint sound like breath, trying to remember how to be strong. Jonas looked down at her, face unreadable. The auctioneer coughed. Paperwork. Jonas turned, already stepping down. Keep it. He walked back to his horse, the heat shimmering between him and the town. The crowd watched him swing into the saddle, the bundle held close against his chest. He didn't look back. Hooves thudded against hard ground, fading toward the horizon where the land swallowed the road in waves of light. By the time the dust settled, folks were already talking. Some said he was a saint. Some said a fool. And a few swore they saw the way his jaw tightened, like a man who'd just taken back something the world once stole. But no one followed. Not into that sun. The wind scraped along the eaves, carrying the dry rattle of mesquite branches against the side of the barn. Jonas knelt in the yard, mending a section of fence wire, the pliers biting through steel with sharp, final snaps. Behind him, the rhythmic creak of saddle leather and the thud of hooves circled the corral. Clara leaned forward in the saddle, her braid whipping in the breeze. She's favoring the left leg, she called out, patting the mare's neck. Jonas didn't look up. Ride her till she's warmed through. Don't let her get lazy. His voice was even, but it carried the weight of something unspoken. The girl urged the horse into a tighter loop, dust curling at their heels. Beyond the fence, the land stretched flat and endless until it broke against the red walls of the mesas. Not a soul moved out there, but Jonas's eyes kept sliding toward the horizon all the same. Inside the barn, a lantern swayed on its hook, its light spilling over a locked chest shoved beneath a workbench. A faint smell of gun oil clung to the air, though the rifles hung untouched on the wall. Clara swung down from the saddle, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. She ran a hand along the mare's flank before glancing at Jonas. When are we going into town again? Not yet. He straightened, wiping his hands on his trousers. The answer came quick, like it was already loaded in his mouth. You always say that. Jonas's gaze flicked toward her, sharp for the briefest moment, then softened. Ain't much worth seeing there. From somewhere far off, a coyote yipped, the sound thin against the heavy quiet. Jonas tilted his head, listening until the echo faded. Evening settled over the ranch like a slow blanket. The wind eased, and the only sounds were the creak of the barn door and the clink of Jonas's spurs as he walked inside. Clara followed, but he stopped her with a raised hand. Get the lanterns lit. I'll finish up here. She hesitated, eyes drifting to the chest. He caught the movement. For a breath, they held each other's gaze, hers full of questions, his full of walls. The flame caught in the lantern glass, throwing long shadows across the rafters. Jonas stood in the dim light, the lines in his face cut deep, his silhouette framed by the open door and the dark beyond. The land was still, too still. Jonas closed the barn door slow, the latch clicking into place like the closing of a thought he wasn't ready to speak. The sky bled red across the mesas, shadows stretching long over the grass. Jonas stood in the yard, one hand resting on the fence post, watching the dust rise far off, 6 riders, dark against the dying light. The creak of the barn door drew his eyes. Clara stepped out, wiping her hands on her skirt. Something out there? He didn't answer, just kept watching the horizon. The riders were coming fast enough to leave a trail that curled behind them like smoke. Jonas's jaw tightened. Get inside. She took a step toward him. Jonas. Barn, he said, sharper now. Go. Take the long rifle from under the feed sack. You remember how I taught you. Don't touch that trigger unless you mean to kill. The wind shifted, carrying the faint jingle of spurs and the low thud of hooves. Clara froze, then back toward the barn. Jonas stayed where he was, the light catching the silver threads in his hair, the limp in his stance more pronounced as he walked out to meet the dust. The riders slowed as they neared, their horses blowing hard, nostrils flaring. The man in front, broad-shouldered, coat worn to the color of dirt, grinned wide enough to show the gap where a tooth should have been. Well, if it ain't Jonas Hale, the man drawled, voice soaked in mockery. Thought you dried up and blown away. Jonas's face didn't move. You're on my land. The man's eyes flicked toward the barn. Heard tell you got something here don't belong to you. A murmur rolled through the man behind him. Leather groaned, rifle butts shifted. Jonas took a step forward, slow, steady. Everything here's mine. The leader laughed, but it was a brittle sound. Girl's worth a good bit to the right people. Her bloodline. You don't know a damn thing, Jonas cut in. A moment of silence hung in the cooling air, heavy as stone. The horses stamped, restless. One of the riders spat into the dirt. The leader's grin faded. We'll take her or Hale, or we'll take you and burn this place to the ground. Jonas's hand dropped to his side, fingers brushing the worn handle of the Colt that had hung there untouched for years. The sun dipped lower, throwing the world into a red gloom. Behind the barn door, Clara's breath came quick, her hands tight around a rifle stock. The leader leaned forward in his saddle, voice low. Last chance. Jonas's eyes narrowed, the lines of his face carved deep by shadow and sunset. You already had it. The first shot cracked the air, a flash from the leader's revolver. Jonas moved before the echo died, Colt clearing leather in a blur, muzzle flare lighting the hard set of his jaw. One man pitched from the saddle, hitting the dirt with a hollow thump. Another's horse screamed, rearing as a bullet tore through its flank. The smell of gunpowder rolled across the yard, bitter and sharp. Jonas stepped sideways, limp all but gone, firing with the precision of a man who'd done this dance too many times to count. 2 more riders dropped, dust blooming around their falling bodies. From the barn, Clara's shot rang out, clean, certain. A rider clutched his side, sliding to the ground with a wet gasp. The last 2 wheeled their mounts hard, panic snapping the tight rope of their bravado. They kicked up a storm of dust as they fled toward the horizon. Jonas lowered the Colt, eyes fixed on the disappearing shapes until they were swallowed by the dark. Only then did he stagger, hand pressed to the growing red on his shirt. Clara burst from the barn, rifle still in hand. Jonas! He waved her closer, voice rough. It's all right. She dropped to her knees beside him, the dirt already soaking with his blood. He looked at her the way a man studies the last thing he'll ever see. They'd have never stopped coming, he said, breath shallow. Not while you were still theirs to take. Her grip tightened on his arm. What are you talking about? Jonas's gaze drifted toward the fading light. Your ma, she wasn't just a woman I knew. She was my wife. You were hers when she died. Your father, he coughed, the sound breaking in his chest, was one of them, killed before you were born. I swore you'd never carry their name. The sky above them burned deep crimson, the kind of sunset that swallowed the land whole. Clara shook her head, words caught in her throat. Jonas smiled faintly, though his lips were pale. You ride now, and you keep riding. Don't let this land make you small. Don't let anyone tell you who you are. The wind shifted, lifting the brim of his hat and carrying the smell of dust and smoke away. His hand slipped from hers, settling into the dirt. Clara stayed there until the last light died from the sky, the silence of the plains wrapping around her like a shroud. Years later, they'd still tell it, the way Jonas Hale faced down 6 men and left only the wind to bury him. Some said he was a killer. Some said a fool. But the ones who knew better said he was a man who spent the last of his bullets buying a girl her freedom.